This is the IBJ podcast for the week of September 14th, 2020, sponsored by the law firm Krieg DeVault. I'm Leslie Weidenbetter. If you are a regular listener, you know Mason King is our podcast host, but he is on a much-deserved vacation. So we asked IBJ reporter Anthony Schoettle to fill in with an interview of Katara McCarty. She's an Indianapolis woman who has developed an app to help Black women cope with new stresses like the pandemic, ongoing struggles like racial injustice, and the everyday problems of working and parenting. Anthony wrote a story about Katara in the September 4 issue of IBJ, but we thought you'd enjoy hearing from her more directly about what motivated the app, how she developed it, and the other projects she and her husband have been up to. And there's a lot of them. Katara and Ryan launched a church in Marion, a school in Zambia, and a community center for children also in Marion. Here's Anthony's conversation with Katara.
I'd like to welcome to the IBJ podcast, Katara McCarty. Katara, thanks for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with you.
So I wrote about Katara's company and her new app, Exhale, last week. And it's good to catch up with you again. And I remember from our interview that you were telling me about your technical abilities, which is something that I can relate to. So just kind of tell me what your technical capabilities are and how that kind of played into you starting the app.
Yeah, I'm not tech savvy. I'm 48 years old. I remember when computers came out, it was like a big craze when I was a teenager. So I wouldn't claim to be very tech savvy just simply because of my age. I've learned how to navigate technology, but usually with the help of my daughters who are now in their 20s, who really have to give me little side lessons here and there. So I use apps, especially those meditation apps, and I access them all the time. And so just in my experience with them and how they have helped me, that really played into, I think, provoking even the idea that there was a possibility to have an emotional well-being app. I definitely wasn't sure how, quote unquote, how to do it, but I knew that it was possible.
Katara, one of the things that really struck me in our interview last week was the number of challenges you've overcome. So tell me a little bit about your life's journey and how that related to the challenging of developing and producing the Exhale app.
Yeah. So, the story starts in 1972, which sounds like a really long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. Let's be real. My biological mother had me, gave birth to me at the hospital in Kokomo, Indiana. I'm a Indiana native, and she decided to leave me at the hospital. And so I went into foster care and was fortunately adopted by a woman who was looking to adopt another little girl. She had already adopted one daughter and was looking for another one. And my great aunt, worked at the foster care office, and my chart came across her desk. And she opened it up and kind of reviewed it and found that they were having a hard time placing me because I'm biologically biracial. So my mother that birthed me, my biological mother is white and my father's Black. And so they were having a hard time placing me because white families didn't want me because I was half Black, and Black families were a little apprehensive to take me because I was half white. It was, again, the 70s. It was very taboo to have little babies like me back then. And she called her niece and said, hey, we have this baby girl and they're trying to place her. They're having a hard time placing her. What are your thoughts? And the woman, Betty, who is now my mother, said, bring that baby over here. I don't care. I want another little girl. Sounds like she'd be a great fit. And so I got dropped off to 707 East Jefferson Street in Kokomo, Indiana, to Betty Waters and her mother, Mary, who they both raised me. And so developing this app felt like it was a full circle for me. I was really trying to figure out ways to give back to my community with all of the uprising that happened during COVID and quarantine and how COVID was impacting the Black community disproportionately. And with all the racial unrest that was happening, the movement for Black lives that was happening. There was a lot of stress and anxiety and trauma that was happening within my community, a lot of grief. And I kept asking myself, how can I help? Like, what can I do to lean in and really help my community and really give back? And the idea of the app came, and it definitely feels full circle because I had women, Black women who raised me, and the app is specific for Black, Indigenous women of color. And so it feels very much like this full circle mandate or calling or purpose to give back to women in a way that they cared for me when I needed it most.
Let me ask you, and you've touched on it a bit, but expound just a little bit why you felt the need for the Exhale app. And I remember that you had said to me when we did our interview that Black women are among the most marginalized in U.S. society. Explain that part of it as well.
You know, the pandemic hit, and again, news was coming out that the Black community was being impacted disproportionately. And the news was saying it was because Black people have pre-existing conditions, which we do, but that's not the full narrative. And it really frustrated me that there was a piece of that story that was missing. We have pre-existing conditions. The root of that is systemic racism and systems of oppression. And so it really motivated me to do something for the community and to really give back in a way. And so I was managing my own stress. I was managing my own stress as a woman of color, Black woman, navigating what was happening in my community. I would open up my phone and it felt like, every other day we were seeing another viral video of somebody that could be our uncle, could be our dad, could be our sister, could be our mom, could be our daughter, our son. And so for the Black community, it felt like things were just so magnified, and the trauma of even seeing and watching the videos was traumatizing. As a Black woman navigating life, I know what it's like to face those systems of oppression. And we're not only facing racism, but also, misogyny and, all of those things. So there's a lot of intersectionality that happens with Black women, brown women, that compound our stress and our anxiety. And so I felt like it was really important to create something exclusively for us, by us, that spoke directly to our needs, directly to our grief, our pain, and our oppression.
I know that this is obviously an audio recording here, and so people can't see. And in case you didn't know, I am a white man. And so sometimes I feel personally that it can be not difficult to relate to once I understand, but I need to have my eyes open sometime. And in interviewing you, that has happened. And I also interviewed another Black woman, Marlo David, who is a professor at Indiana University, and she was telling me about the pain that she has experienced through a lot of what's happened here in the last 6 months, and the fact that she just had to shut off the news a lot of times. And that struck me, especially with Marlo, because not only is she a professor, but before that, she had been a journalist and was a journalist of some repute. She had worked for the Orlando Sentinel and the San Jose Mercury News. So this is a person very much in tune to being in and around and eyeball deep in the news, who is having such difficulty with this kind of exposure. I mean, that really struck me. I guess, Katara, I'd like to get your take on how difficult all that exposure can be.
Well, I mean, when we see, even, you're just on Instagram or Facebook, or you're looking at the news, and all of a sudden there's a video of, for example, the George Floyd video. When you see that, and that happens in your community, it wasn't like, I don't know that there's police brutality or there's racial profiling that happens, that there's oppression that happens, that there's microaggressions that happen. We know that it happens. It happens to us every day, right? But to see it in our news feeds and how rapidly they were coming, and they were going viral, it's traumatizing, because it's as if you're seeing it, live, like a real person, which again could be your family member. And Marlo specifically, a dear friend of mine, has 3 Black sons. And her little 4-year-old, she told me, asked her, "Mommy, am I going to die?" And that's his take as he's hearing, he's on his little iPad, he's playing with his toys, but the news, he's absorbing what they're watching, what they're hearing, and what they're talking about and their concerns for their boys. And she said, I didn't realize that not only is that the anxiety and stress hitting me as a mother, as a Black mother, but it's also now becoming a concern for my 4-year-old little boy. And so it becomes, it's happening. You're always, as a parent, specifically as a mom, we have to have these conversations with our children. This is what you do when you get pulled over by the police. This is what you absolutely do not do. And we have to have those conversations with our children. So there's already that kind of stress and anxiety when they go out into the world from under your wing. But to see it, we saw Ahmaud, we saw George Floyd, there's been more videos that we've seen. It's traumatizing. And it adds a level of stress and anxiety, again, that like you mentioned, you as a white man wouldn't experience, right? Because you don't have that same narrative in your culture.
We have talked a bit about family and how this has related to family. And I recall one of the favorite parts of our interview is when you told me about how your daughters helped on this and your husband helped on this. I mean, this was quite the family affair. You told the story about your husband and you sitting around the dining room table, laughing in a way at the fact that how little you knew about developing an app in this instance and just figuring it out. The quote that you used was, you said, "We stumbled through. There were moments where we were just laughing because we didn't know what we were doing. We just had that spirit about us." So Katara, tell us a little bit about the spirit that you're talking about and how that helped you in developing the app.
Yeah, my husband and I are just entrepreneurs at heart. I became a small business owner in my 20s. I had my own little nail shop. I did nails back in the day. And then him and I ventured into starting our own nonprofit. As an entrepreneur, venturing into starting your own business, your own organization, which is what we did, our nonprofit organization, we learned really early how to get scrappy and how to just work with what you have until you get what you want. And we've just had to pull together and figure stuff out. Like we didn't have the financial resources to hire a huge staff or to pay for PR or to pay for marketing or to help, somebody design our flyers and things like that. And so from early on, we just learned how to use what was in front of us to make the dream that we had in our heart happen. And I think that that's something that has really been a life lesson for me, is when you feel really strongly that this is what you're passionate about, this is what your purpose is in life, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing in this season of my life. When you feel that deeply in your soul, those other things, you'll figure it out. You'll ask questions, you'll ask for help, you'll do it yourself. And so my husband used to say all the time, he's like, I feel like we built this church and, it was like building an airplane, but we were still adding parts as it was flying in the air. We're making it work. And I think that has been something that we have done throughout, our young adult lives as we've built different organizations, our community center, the school in Africa, all the things that we've done. We didn't know how to do that, but we felt very, very deeply about the why. We knew our why. And our why wasn't to be successful. Our why wasn't to, look what we've done. Our why was always to give back and to uplift a community wherever we found ourselves. And when you feel that and you know your why, the what, you'll figure out the what. You'll figure it out. And that's exactly what we did with this app. I knew my why and I knew who I wanted to reach, and we figured out the what.
Let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast. The IBJ Podcast is brought to you by Krieg DeVault, a trusted and dynamic law firm representing a wide variety of local, regional, and national clients. Committed to each other and to every client, Krieg DeVault prides itself on integrity, professionalism, respect, and excellence. Financial institutions, global manufacturers, national healthcare providers, and successful organizations of all sizes and market focus rely on Krieg DeVault to create innovative and successful business solutions. Connect today at www.kriegdevault.com. Now back to IBJ reporter Anthony Schoettle's conversation with entrepreneur Katara McCarty.
You referenced a little bit there about the founding of the church. So as I recall, you founded a non-denominational Christian church in Marion, Indiana, which has grown from essentially very few members to more than 600 members. You also, and I'm going from memory here, Katara, so correct me, and then I want you to expound on what you guys have done. You had founded, I believe, a school in Zambia, and then a youth-oriented center in Marion as well. Tell us a little bit about those endeavors and how you even got into that world in the first place.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because something that's been a common thread in my life is I've been drawn to a need, and then I'm like, how do I meet this need? And so with the church, we were very drawn to start a non-denominational, multicultural church. It was not back in the late 90s, early 2000s. It wasn't something that you saw in small towns, was diverse churches. There were white churches, there were Black churches, but there wasn't a place where it was diverse for people to come in and worship together. And so we saw a need, and we went to work meeting that need. The community center, after we started the church, there were kids in our neighborhood. We were in what folks in our city called not the great part of the neighborhood. And so it's where we decided to put the church. And there were kids that were spray painting our building, our beautiful church building. They were spray painting, and some of the parishioners like, we need to call the police on these kids. I'm like, no, we just actually need to give them something to do. And so I saw a need. I'm like, these kids, their parents are working. They're after school, they're kind of running the streets. So let's build a community center and give them snacks and help them with their homework and play kickball with them. Like, let's give them something to do. So I saw a need. Same in Africa. My husband and I met a family in Africa who had a desire to start a church. So we partnered with them, Zambian folks, and helped them build the church. They had a desire to start a school. So we pulled our resources together and helped build a building and drill a borehole because there wasn't water for the kids and they needed bathrooms. And so we just saw a need. And again, we didn't know how to build a school. I didn't know where we were going to get the money. I'd never been to Africa before, right? So it's just very much need driven, and seeing a need and saying, hey, I don't know if I can do much, but let me lean into this and see what I can do to help with this need. And that same thread has led to the development of Exhale app and saying, hey, there's a need. What can I do to lean in and help to, even in a small way, meet this need?
So we've described the Exhale app as a well-being app, but walk us through the features on the app and how the intended use for the app.
Yeah, so my goal was to not just have a meditation app, which I love meditating, and there are definitely meditations on the app, but I wanted to expand it because I'm a coach and I partner with my clients in really their emotional well-being and really living the life that they desire and the life that they deserve. And so I wanted to make the app a little bit more robust than just meditation. So we have meditations that the user can sit down and listen to and meditate with, but we also have what we call Imagine. And these are guided visualizations. I do these with my clients all the time. And basically it's letting the user kind of close their eyes and do an internal assessment of what's really happening on the inside of them, and to really gain some internal resources to overcome limiting beliefs, to really deal with those saboteur negative thoughts that they're having that's holding them back. And so we have Imagine. We also have daily affirmations. When someone downloads the app, they get a daily notification that's just encouraging them. And so that's on the app. We have breath work, guided breath work. They're just like 5 to 8 minutes where the user can dive into a breath work that's guided, that helps them center themselves, calm themselves. If they're nervous about going into a meeting, they can run to the bathroom, put their earbuds in and do a 5-minute breath work with our guided breath work. And so last thing, I have coaching talks. I'm a coach and I like to talk. And so I just get real down and real, and I just have chats. I just talk about some tools and resources that the user can access, and really giving wisdom and advice on how to live the life that they hope and desire for.
And why did you target it to women specifically?
Well, I just feel like, again, we are some of the most marginalized Black, Indigenous women of color. When I say Black, Indigenous women of color, I mean all those gender identities that are oppressed by racism and misogyny. I feel like sometimes in movements, even back in the civil rights movement, that movement couldn't have happened without women, but you didn't see them in the front. You didn't see them on the microphone, right? It was predominantly looked as if it was led by men. And so we're some of the most left out, I believe, in conversation and movements and conversations of equity. And so I wanted to speak directly to us and center us, because usually we're not the ones that are being centered. And so I wanted to really provide resources that spoke directly to our needs and directly to the things that we face that are different from other folks.
Katara, give me a brief chronology of the development of the Exhale app. When did the idea hit you? When did you start developing it? When did you actually bring it to market?
Yeah, so I got the idea in April. It was late April. I was asking myself, what can I do? What can I do to really give back? And it felt like weeks that I was asking myself. But when I look back, I think it was probably days. And I remember sitting downstairs in my basement, and just the place where I meditate, where I get still and tune into myself. And I was just in a place of stillness and quietness. And the idea just came. And so I opened up my phone and I looked at the meditation apps that I had downloaded on my phone, and they were all co-founded or founded by white folks, which is fine. They served me. I appreciate those apps. I still listen to them sometimes, but I only found one that was for people of color. And I downloaded it and I listened to it, and it's a great app. It's called Liberate. So I want to shout out Liberate app. But I really wanted to do something specifically for women, Black women and brown women. And so got the idea, did my little research, was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing out there for us. And then came upstairs, ran upstairs, like my husband was probably like, what are you doing? I was so excited. I was like, I really feel like I have a great idea. He's like, okay, which isn't uncommon for people in my family. My husband and my daughters and I always have these harebrained ideas. And so he said, okay, tell me. And so I told him, he goes, that's a great idea, Katara. And I know that the community has been heavy on your heart. Your folks have been heavy on your heart. And I think that this is a great thing. And so then we started Googling, like, how do you create an app? Like, do we need to hire a developer? Like, do you need to learn how to code? Like, what does this look like? And we found platforms that are much like developing your own website, that you can pop in information and kind of create it yourself. And so I just started pulling all of my resources that I give my clients. I started writing meditations, talked to my daughters. They were on board to help narrate. My youngest daughter was like, we should take our own photos and use our own model and really make it look beautiful. Like aesthetically, we wanted it to look nice, and we wanted it to have representation. So as a woman of color opens up the app, we wanted her to see her, right? And so we were very specific about all that. So the idea came late April and it went to market August 25th. So really, there's about 4 months that we just hunkered down, and it's all I did. I recorded in my closet. Fortunately, I have a producer that produces my podcast, and they were on board to do all the work pro bono as far as mixing it and making it sound really nice. And so working with them back and forth with edits, and it was a lot, but it was also refreshing for me. It didn't feel like work. It felt very much like I was feeding myself as I was prepping to offer this to other women. So it was a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, one of the things that I recall from our conversation earlier was that you said, how impactful it was to have photographs of Black women on the app and voices of Black women on the app. And other people who I had interviewed who had listened to the app said the same thing. I guess, for a white person's perspective, it may be a little bit difficult to understand. I know I'm speaking personally now, why those elements are so important.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to see representation because and you can hear that there's someone that understands you. And there's this immediate connection and a level of trust that you're able to have when there's someone like you speaking back to you or that you can see. And it's very empowering. I'm a cisgender heterosexual woman. And when I talk to my sister who is gay, she's a Black woman, I have blind spots. Right? So I have to learn from her because I'm not walking in her shoes and living life in her shoes. There are things that I don't get and I miss and I mess up and I say things wrong and I don't quite understand and she has to help me, right? And I have to educate myself. It's not always up to her to educate me about the LGBTQIA plus community, right? I have to learn. But I have blind spots. And I think that that's the reason why I felt like it was really important to create this by us, for us, because in the wellness community, those spaces sometimes, because they're curated and narrated by white folks, there are blind spots. And then that makes us feel overlooked or not spoken to, or that there's not space for us to fully be ourselves. And so I really felt like it was important to create a brave space for Black, Indigenous women of color. They could show up fully as themselves and have someone that they could hear that relates and understands their journey and what it's like to weave through life in their brown bodies.
And to your knowledge, this is the first app produced totally by Black women for Black women, correct?
Yes, definitely. Now my daughters helped, so we call ourselves women of color. So, but yeah, hopefully in the future we can have more voices on the app that bring more representation. Indigenous women I would love to have on the app and their voices and centering their voices. And so, yeah, it is the first emotional well-being app specifically by Black, Indigenous women of color for Black, Indigenous women of color.
So for the uninitiated, Katara, explain that term Black, Indigenous women of color. What does that encompass?
Yeah, so Black women, I always say Black and brown. If you've got brown skin and you're a woman or you have a gender identity that is oppressed by racism and misogyny, the app is for you. It's been specifically curated for you. And so we're very specific about that. So in the meditations, I speak directly to us. I say things like, you as a Black woman, you as a brown woman, right? This is the things that you face. And I know because I face them. And again, we're talking about all Black, Indigenous women of color. We're including trans, gender nonconforming, genderqueer, non-binary folks that, again, are oppressed by racism and misogyny.
So I know the app has only been on the market since August 25th. So it's still a newborn, but what has the response been thus far?
Oh my gosh, we've gotten such great response. It's been really beautiful. Folks are messaging me all the time, sending us emails, telling us that they're so grateful for this app, that it's so timely, that they're grateful for the breath work and some of the meditations. What's been really surprising is I've had some white women reach out to me and thank me for creating the app and have asked if they could download it. And I'm like, sure, you can download it. And something that I learned from a friend of mine, Christine Platt, she's writes children's books. And she said that her books are windows and mirrors. They're windows for little brown and Black kids to see themselves, but they're also windows for white children to read, to peer into another culture that's different from theirs to learn. And so what I have found that's really beautiful is white women are using the app as a window, right? We've created it as a mirror for Black and brown women, but white women are using it as a window to learn and to understand our level of oppression and our intersectionality that happens with our lives. And that's been a really beautiful surprise that I didn't expect. And it's come in a way that's very surprising and very, I don't know, they've been gracious. to ask if it's okay and can they experience it, and I've gotten some feedback that some of the white women are learning what a microaggression is, and they're learning like, wow, I didn't realize that, and maybe next time I can do better.
The feedback makes me wonder, and Marlo David had wondered the same thing when I talked to her, if you would consider forming communities around the Exhale app. And I know originally that I don't think that was part of your scope, but have you given that any consideration?
I definitely have considered that. I would love, just being a coach, I've hosted events, coaching events and workshops and different things, group events. And so I definitely, my mind has gone there, where we could create a community where we have interaction with each other, where we can encourage each other, where we can really build each other up as a community, support each other, lean into each other, grieve with each other, hold space for each other's pain, and also celebrate with each other the wins and the good things. So I definitely think that that's on deck. That's definitely something that I'm looking at developing in 2021.
So because we're a business journal, we talk about the business part of it too. So in the article, I explain how it's free now. The app is free, totally free until September 30th. And then parts of the app will remain free after September 30th, but parts also will be available on a subscription basis, monthly or annual. So I guess I'm curious, have you gotten any takers on I know it's a little early yet, have you gotten any takers on the subscription side of it, and or have you gotten any commercial interest from either sponsors or advertisers, potential sponsors or advertisers for the app?
Yeah, we haven't gotten any interest nobody reaching out as far as advertising yet, but if anybody's listening that would like to contact me about that, I'm completely open to that. But yeah, so when we first launched the app Tuesday, the 25th, it was a few days after Jacob Blake was shot. And I watched a video of his sister speaking, and then I saw another video of his mother. And it really prompted me to say, oh my gosh, it just felt like another hit to our community. So I just told my team, I said, here's the deal. We're just going to make it free for now. My community is hemorrhaging. That's what it felt like. Like, we are in so much pain, so much grief. Let's just make it free. So made it free. You know, I don't know if that was a good business decision, but I was going with my gut. I felt like it was the right thing to do. And so we opened it up, and the plan is to October 1st. So to say that, the first couple of days, we did get a handful of subscribers. And then we sent out an email and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We can refund you for a month, or you can, and they all were like, it's fine. And so then everybody else has been able to download it for free, which will remain free to download. And then they've been able to access the entire app. So yes, we're going to go to a subscription base. Some of the pages will be for the premium option of $4.99 a month or $50 for the year. And, you know, I'm hoping, you know, I am a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a Black female business owner. So I'm hoping that, you know, this can definitely be, you know, stream in some money. And I really would love to pour money back into the app, because I have more ideas for the app and I want to upgrade the app, and I have all these ideas. And so I would love to be able to bring in some revenue to pour back into the work.
Katara, I really appreciate your time. I've enjoyed our second interview at least as much, and maybe more than our first interview. I learn so much every time we speak, and I really do appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, you're the best.
Thanks to Anthony and Katara. If you'd like to know more about the Exhale app, you can read Anthony's story at ibj.com. Anthony also has a story in the latest issue of IBJ about how Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance is finding ways to inject innovation into its business model. The result is a startup aimed at helping homeowners detect and fix water leaks quickly. And there will likely be additional spin-off companies coming. Also, the September 11 issue of IBJ will take you on a journey through Indie Art and Seek, a project that has put more than 100 works of art in lower-income neighborhoods across the city. There's a map along with profiles of a handful of the artists. You can find those stories and much more at ibj.com. We hope you already have a subscription so you can have full access to all of our stories. If not, go to ibj.com and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in. Mason King will be back next Monday. Have a great week.